Welcome to AI Horror Stories. Prepare to be chilled. Subscribe now and hit that notification bell for daily doses of AI-generated fright. First story is Haunted Phone Number. These numbers are supposedly cursed and have urban legends associated with them. Warning, do not call these numbers. First number 666, 666, 6666 or 1-666. 666, 6666. For years, people all over the world have been receiving creepy messages from the phone numbers. Some people believe these phone calls come from the devil. In many cases, the calls do not show up on the phone bill. Second number 999, 9999. According to an urban legend in Thailand, 999, 9999 is a cursed number. If you call it and make a wish, your wish will be granted. However, you will die soon afterwards in a freak accident. Third red numbers. In Pakistan, people were warning each other not to pick up calls from numbers that appeared on the screen in red. They claimed these were cursed phone numbers or death calls. Apparently, if you answered the call, you would hear a high-frequency signal that would cause you to have a brain hemorrhage, killing you instantly. There were reports that dozens of people had already been killed by answering calls from these sinister numbers. Fourth number 090-4444-4444. In Japan, the number 090-4444-4444 was known as Sadako's number. If you call the number, you are supposed to be able to hear some strange, creepy noise. They say that anyone who calls the number will die within a week in some type of accident. In Japan, the number 4, sure, sounds like the word for death, sure. Sadako was the ghost from the Ring movies, so it is possible this number was set up to promote the movies. Fifth number 0888-888-888. In Bulgaria, the phone number 0888-888-888 is believed to be cursed. They say that anyone who has a mobile phone with this number will die a horrible death. The first man who owned the number died of an aggressive form of cancer. The second man was shot to death in the street. When the third owner of the number was also shot to death in the street, nobody else wanted anything to do with the number, and the mobile phone company, Mobitel, had to suspend it. From that point on, any attempt to call the number resulted in a pre-recorded message which simply stated, outside network coverage. Sixth number 1-000-000-0000. In some Asian countries, people claim that the phone number 1-000-000-0000 was cursed. If you called it, you would hear a male voice telling you that if you did not call 15 or more people and tell them about the cursed number, you would die. Seventh number 666. In the USA, there is an urban legend about the phone number 666. They say that if you call it, you will contact the devil. All of my friends claim to have tried it with varying results. Some say nothing happened, some say they heard eerie music, others say they heard satanic noises. 81-207-404-2604. This number was set up to promote the horror movie Carrie. At the end of the trailer for the movie, it said, "Call Carrie," and the number was displayed. When you call the number, a different number calls you back 3 times with creepy messages. The first is horrified screaming, the second is spooky singing, and the third is scary whispering. Ninth number dialing the dead. I read this in a book of true ghost stories. People who were children in the 1970s claimed that in the UK, there was a mysterious number that could be dialed for free in a payphone. When the call was picked up, you would hear a woman's voice saying, over and over, help me, Susie's dying." Second story is Mr. Widemouth. Mr. Widemouth is a scary creepypasta story about a 5-year-old boy who has an imaginary friend that might not be so imaginary after all. When I was a child, my family moved around a lot. We never stayed in the same place for long, and it seemed as if we were always on the move. Because of this, many of my early memories are fuzzy and unclear. However, there is one period of time that remains as clear in my mind, as though it all happened just yesterday. I often wonder whether these memories were simply hallucinations caused by the long sickness I experienced that spring, but in my heart, I know they are real. We were living in a large house on the outskirts of the city. As a family of 3, we didn't really need such a big home, and there were a number of rooms that we never used during the 5 months we spent there. In some ways, it was a waste of space, but it was the only house we could find at the time that was close to my father's place of work. "You look kind of like a Furby," I said as he flipped through one of my books. Mr. Widemouth stopped and gave me a puzzled look. "Furby? What's a Furby?" he asked. I shrugged. "You know, the toys. The little furry robots with the big ears. You can pet them and feed them, almost like they're real pets." "Oh," replied Mr. Widemouth, "you don't need one of those. They aren't the same as having a real friend." I remember that Mr. Widemouth seemed to disappear every time my mother stopped by to check in on me. "I hide under your bed," he later explained. "I don't want your parents to see me because I'm afraid they won't let us play together anymore." We didn't do much during those first few days. Mr. Widemouth just looked at my books, fascinated by the stories and pictures they contained. The 3rd or 4th morning after I met him, he greeted me with a large smile on his face. "I have a new game we can play," he said. "We have to wait until after your mother comes to check on you, because she can't see us play it. It's a secret game." My mother came in with a few more books and some soda at the usual time. After she left, Mr. Widemouth slipped out from under the bed and tugged me by the hand. "We have to go to the room at the end of the hallway," he said. I objected at first, because my parents had forbidden me to leave my bed without their permission. Mr. Widemouth persisted until, finally, I gave in. The room at the end of the hall had no furniture or wallpaper. Its only distinguishing feature was a window opposite the doorway. Mr. Widemouth darted across the room and gave the window a firm push, flinging it open. Then, he beckoned to me and told me to look out at the ground below. We were on the 2nd floor of the house, but it was on a hill, and from this angle the drop was more than 2 floors, due to the incline. "I like to play pretend up here," Mr. Widemouth explained. "I pretend that there is a big, soft trampoline below this window, and I jump. If you pretend hard enough you bounce back up like a feather. I want you to try." I was a 5-year-old with a high fever, so I wasn't thinking very clearly as I looked down and considered the possibility. "It's a long drop," I said. "But that's all a part of the fun," he replied. "It wouldn't be fun if it was only a short drop. If it were that way you may as well just bounce on a real trampoline." I toyed with the idea, picturing myself falling through thin air only to bounce back to the window on something unseen by human eyes. But the realist in me prevailed. "Maybe some other time," I said. "I don't know if I have enough imagination. I could get hurt." Mr. Widemouth's face contorted into a snarl, but only for a moment. Anger gave way to disappointment. "If you say so," he sighed. He spent the rest of the day under my bed, quiet as a mouse. The following morning Mr. Widemouth arrived holding a small box. "I want to teach you how to juggle," he said. "Here are some things you can use to practice, before I start giving you lessons." I looked in the box. It was full of knives. "My parents will kill me," I shouted, horrified that Mr. Widemouth had brought knives into my room. "My parents would never allow me to touch them. I'll be spanked and grounded for a year." Mr. Widemouth frowned. "It's fun to juggle with these. I want you to try it." I pushed the box away. "I can't. I'll get in trouble, knives aren't safe to just throw around in the air." Mr. Widemouth's frown deepened into a scowl. He took the box of knives and then slid himself under my bed. He remained there for the rest of the day. I began to wonder how often he was under there. I started having trouble sleeping after that. Mr. Widemouth often woke me up at night, saying he put a real trampoline under the window, a big invisible one. He said that I couldn't see it in the dark. I always declined and tried to go back to sleep, but Mr. Widemouth persisted. Sometimes he stayed by my side until early in the morning, encouraging me to jump. He wasn't so fun to play with anymore. My mother came to me one morning and told me I was well enough to go outside and walk around for a while. She thought the fresh air would do me some good, especially after being confined to my room for so long. Ecstatic, I put on my sneakers and trotted out to the back porch, yearning to feel the sun on my face. Mr. Widemouth was outside, waiting for me. "I have something I want you to see," he said. I must have given him a weird look, because he added, "It's safe, I promise." I followed him and he led me to a trail that ran through the woods behind the house. "This is an important path," he explained. "I've had a lot of friends about your age." When they were ready, I took them down this path, to a special place. "You aren't ready yet, but one day, I hope to take you there." I returned to the house, wondering what kind of place lay at the end of that trail. 2 weeks after I met Mr. Widemouth, we packed the last of our belongings into a moving truck and were about to set off on the long drive to our new home. I considered telling Mr. Widemouth that I would be leaving, but even at 5 years old, I was beginning to suspect that perhaps his intentions were not to my benefit, despite what he claimed. For this reason, I decided to keep my departure a secret. It was 4 a.m. by the time we were ready to leave. My mother helped me into the truck and my father was sitting behind the wheel. I placed my head against the window, hoping to get some sleep before the sun came up. As we backed out of the driveway, I looked up and saw Mr. Widemouth's silhouette in my bedroom window. He stood there, motionless, until the truck was about to turn onto the main road. He gave a pitiful little wave goodbye, a steak knife in his other hand. I didn't wave back. Years later, I was passing through the area and decided to return and pay a visit to that house. I found that the piece of land our house had stood on was empty, except for the foundation. The house had burned down a few years after we left. Out of curiosity, I followed the trail that Mr. Widemouth had shown me. Part of me expected him to jump out from behind a tree and scare the living daylights out of me, but I felt that Mr. Widemouth was gone, somehow tied to the house that no longer existed. The trail ended at a small cemetery. I noticed that many of the tombstones belonged to children.